Welcome to the Irish NFL Show and welcome to our Week 1 preview. We are doing it in 4 high-intensity intervals here. We're running a series of sprints. It's not a marathon, so we're breaking down the Week 1 slate across 4 shows. We've done the 6 p.m. games over 2 parts. We're looking now at the 9 o'clock games, and we start with the game of the weekend, Brian. Packers-Bears. Finally, the Justin Fields era gets underway. I'm sure W's across the board from us, right?
Game of the weekend. Waiting all day for
so big, no one's showing it.
This is a fantastic game. Let's be fair. I know, all tongue in cheek, it is one of the games you look forward to the most this weekend. Genuinely mean that. This is a storied rivalry. Great set of fans, both sides, and for the first time in a long time, you're going into a game where both sides really don't know what's going to happen. It's reflective of the line. We discussed it off camera before we start recording. The Bears are favourites. First time I can recall a Bears team being favourites against the Packers for many a year, and probably back to the Matt Forte days, probably along those lines. And they're only -1, so let's not get carried away. But that's the difficulty of the game. It's so hard to call, and we really don't know what we're going to see from Justin Fields. We know we're going to see him running, but are we going to see that expansive type of play we saw from last year? Because that's not fruitful in the long run. We need to get to see him throwing the ball, dropping back 16, 17 passes a game with, the likes of DJ Moore. They've done a bit to bring in weapons around them, and there is developing younger players for the Bears. They've been very heavy in free agency trying to repair this defence. Can it all come together? I remember the Giants in 2016 went really heavy in free agency, brought in a number of players. That year it clicked, it worked, and the following year it was all a disaster. It all fell away very quickly. And for the Packers, Jordan Love, a new era, great freshness about this. I'm siding with the Packers because I still feel the Packers, if you look defensively, didn't lose a lot from last season. That Packers team could have held them together. The defense held them together second half of that last season to put them in a position to make the playoffs. I mean, they were 1 game away from in the playoffs this year. They haven't lost a lot. Brought in talent. New tight end Musgrave, second round pick and wide receiver. Dobbs and Watson look like they're progressing nicely. Tight game. Could see it going either way. I'll lean Packers. Slight game, slight win for the Packers.
Colum, if Matt LaFleur is the coach that we think he is, you got to imagine he's got something schemed up to go and beat the Bears, who the Packers for the last 10 years or so have absolutely, literally, in Aaron Rodgers' words, owned. They won't want to start going the other direction, regardless of who's playing a quarterback.
To me, this is essentially the Backstreet Boys versus NSYNC, right? Because you got 2 young QBs, essentially, right? Fields played last year, but behind what sort of line? He was running, but a lot of times he was running for his life. And they have done a job to improve that side of things. My concern with the Bears is I don't think they've done enough on the pass rush. That would be my concern, and because of that, I don't know if they're going to be able to put Jordan Love under enough pressure. I think the crazy thing for the Packers is Jordan Love, even though this is his first year as a starter, is the most experienced player on offense, right? Amongst the weapons that they have, which is quite telling. But I agree with you. I think LaFleur is a fantastic coach, and I think that defensively, they're a bit more stout than the Bears. I think the Bears are heading in the right direction, but ultimately for me this season for the Bears is Justin Fields the guy? Do we continue to build around him, or do we use what we have to go elsewhere because we know about the QBs in next year's draft? I think the Packers, even though they're on the road, I'm going to be like Brian, although he throws out the odds and whatnot that I still don't understand. But I'm going to say the Packers get the win, and your Bears are 0-1, even though they're at home.
Well, personally, I think the Bears only start as favourites because we know slightly more about Justin Fields than we do about Love. So the odds setters are going to take that into account. They're also playing at home, of course. It's a squeaker. I've starting to feel a lot more positive about this. I think the Bears are going to start the season with a win and finally get one over on the Packers. How the rest of the season goes, I'm on record as saying I think we'll only win 6 games. So I hope that will be one of the 6, and I'm proven right on Sunday.
What I would say, sorry, just final point of this, sometimes beating a particular team can set you on the right track for a season. You can play week 1 against a team from across your conference. There's no, and you win, great. You move on to your next game. But to beat the Packers, and it's been such a long time since they beat the Packers, and a couple of years ago they were up by 20 odd points and Aaron Rodgers finds a way to navigate a return in the second half and to beat them. If they were to win this game, it would do so much for the confidence of Justin Fields and the team and all Bears fans in general.
Right, let's get to Raiders, Broncos country. Are we finally going to start riding now, Brian?
I think that's probably a bit, we're getting a bit too soon for that type of talk. I do think they'll win on Sunday, but I think it's more a reflection of where I believe the Raiders are at. I mean, the Raiders, like we put up our predictions there recently, that great episode of the tier list. I mean, you got shot down by all these Raiders fans. They must be seeing something that we're not. And in fairness, there is some balanced Raiders fans that have come back and said, no, realistically, what you put up is fairly accurate for what we've seen and a reflection of the players they have around them. They brought in a number of wide receivers, in free agency, and they've released them, when they were cutting down to the 53. It's hard to know what we're to see from them. If Josh Jacobs plays like he did last year, yeah, I could see, a reason. But Jimmy G doesn't fill me with confidence. I go with Broncos. I think the Williams, the running back, will come back and have a great game. It looks like Sean Payton wants to utilise the run game. My only concern with the Broncos is if they have to get away from the run game because they find themselves behind. Do they have enough wide receivers to make plays? Because they've lost Judy for a period of time. Obviously, they had the injury to other wide receivers. That concerns me that they don't have a bag full of wide receivers that can help Russell Wilson now if they're behind and need to come back.
Colum, you don't get fireworks from Jimmy G, but from a Josh McDaniels perspective, he knows exactly what he's getting and will know the best and know how to get the best out of Jimmy G. And crucially, I guess from his perspective, Jimmy will do what Josh tells him to do, which wasn't necessarily what he got with Derek Carr last year. Is that enough to unlock what the Raiders have? Because in fairness, he's thrown the ball to Devontae Adams. They got some fearsome looking guys on the other side of the ball as well. They'll tear people up. They're not a nothing team in Vegas.
They're not a nothing talent-wise, but they have Josh McDaniels as their head coach. And I know what Josh McDaniels is like as their head coach. He's awful, and we've seen more of it this week with Chandler Jones. And we saw it prior to that with Josh Jacobs and with Devonta Adams, and with this need to bring in the guys that he knows over and over and over. And it was to his detriment in Denver, and it's to his detriment here in Vegas. They would have moved on from Josh McDaniels last year if they could have afforded it. They couldn't afford. They therefore made Derek Carr the scapegoat. I think they have. Devonta Adams is fantastic. Josh Jacobs is amazing. And they've won 6 on the bounce against the Broncos. And Josh Jacobs has been the key to that, right? He's gone over 100 yards on the ground in the last 3 games. He's been kryptonite for the Broncos. I think there's enormous pressure on the Broncos because of bringing in Sean Payton, right? Big name, big money. He said what he said about the Jets. I think that adds to the pressure. And Judy is ahead of schedule. I doubt he plays Sunday, but I think that they should have enough. And I think you brought Sean Payton in and you expect him to be able to outcoach Josh McDaniels. I think if the Broncos start with a loss against their most hated rivals at home in the Sean Payton era, unless it's something sensational, like it ends up being a 43-41 loss and Russ looks amazing, maybe that's the only way that things look up. But I think the Broncos have to win. I think they do win, but I don't think this will be a pretty game in any way, shape or form.
It's Ziegler, the GM of the Raiders' birthday today. Maybe he will be celebrating come Sunday night, his birthday weekend. What a shocker result.
We shall see. Brian, moving on to Eagles, Pats. Eagles fans feeling themselves, and certainly fans of other teams, according to the bookmakers, are feeling the Eagles as well this year. The money piling on them to win the Super Bowl. They'll be keen to start, of course, as every team is, with a win, but particularly to start erasing the Super Bowl hangover. It's very tough to get back there. Very few teams do it. But we've seen few teams as well-resourced as Philadelphia are to start building that in week 1.
They have so much talent offensively and defensively. And I spoke to a number of Patriots fans this week who are quite confident going into this game because Belichick will navigate away and scheme away at finding a way to victory. And then I think to myself, maybe I'm going to miss a trick here. And this is the game I should be really selecting as my shock of the weekend. And come Monday morning or when we're doing our show early in the week, we'll be saying, Belichick does it again. And we missed a trick here because we should have, realised that he'd have something lined up and a way of navigating and withstanding a really strong offence. I just can't see it. I just don't think they have the talent. We did our previews of the divisions. We all had the Patriots at the bottom for a reason. I'm still unsure of Mac Jones. I know he could have fell back a little here because of what was going on off the field with the 2 guys managing the offence, and he was clearly frustrated. I think he'll flourish under Bill O'Brien. I think we'll see a huge improvement. But they don't have the players, and they certainly don't have the players to live with an Eagles team. They're going into every game last season. They put 35 points up in the Super Bowl and still lost. Jalen Hurts should have been the MVP, and he would have been against the Rams. Possibly he was the MVP and lost the game. Now, look, it's a new season. I think it's just, for me, it's just too big an ask for the Patriots. I think the Eagles will win this one comfortably.
What I'm hearing from Patriots fans, Colum, is they're reinforcing the mantra of the waiting in the long grass, waiting in the long grass, we're waiting in the long grass. Are they waiting in the long grass for the Eagles?
Look, Bill Belichick, if people haven't seen it, his 10-minute answer on the history and development of the long snapper position is amazing. And it's vintage Bill Belichick, and maybe he's got his mojo back after the disaster of last season. It was a disaster. Now maybe he's willing to admit those mistakes, moving on from Matt Patricia, moving on from Bailey Zappi and that ill-fated experiment that they tried for a time there. But they go up against an Eagles team who are, I mean, they are, Taylor Swift is an Eagles fan. They are the Taylor Swift of the NFL. They're inexorable. They're everywhere. Howie is constantly making moves. I mean, they move on from Javon Hargrave, but they bring in Carter, who was probably the standout defensive player in the draft. I do expect them to take a step back. Right, in that I think I have expressed time and time again, Shane Steichen moving on. I think Steichen has such a feel for the way in which to call games. I think that will be an issue. But I just don't know how the Patriots can score enough points. This isn't the NFL that it was when the Patriots were in their pomp. And I just think that while I agree with Brian that I expect Matt Jones to be much improved, and I think defensively they'll be really interesting and they'll try lots of different things, I think the Eagles will squeak it. And I think the fact that Tom Brady is back in New England for kind of a proper send-off, I think the Eagles are going to absolutely be delighted to ruin his party.
Brian, two teams that we've generally been pretty sceptical on throughout the off-season, taking part in the other game in the 9 o'clock window, Dolphins Chargers. Offensive-minded coach, defensive-minded coach, one on a very hot seat, one looking like he's sitting pretty as long as his quarterback stays upright. How do you see this one going?
So I don't mean to laugh. You said sceptical. I think that's, underrated in terms of what I've been saying about this particular Chargers team over the course of the last couple of years in Brandon Staley, and touched on that Ryan Leaf interview earlier on. And obviously he has connections to the Chargers. Again, he referred to the games in which we discussed where they just find ways to lose games, and he puts it down solely on the coaching. It'd be interesting to see if he does change his strategy this year, if he does recognise that games are winnable by taking field goals. In this particular game, I see a really high scoring game. I think this could be the one this weekend. Really whets the appetite. It's the Sky game at 9 o'clock. Maybe Fangio will find a way to navigate and slow this Kellen Moore offense down. I don't see it. I think it'll be a really ding-dong type of game. Interesting to see what Tua's like, bearing in mind he's come back from all those various different injuries and concussions last year. And we saw it again even on Christmas Day. He didn't look right when he played against the Packers. But again, he seems really energised. He's very adamant that people are saying the wrong things about him in the press over the course of the off-season. I'm going to surprise you. I'm going to go with the Chargers to navigate a victory in a high-scoring game. I think it'll be one of those that comes down right to the end, and ironically, maybe it'll be a field goal that wins the game because you'll have no choice but to kick a field goal to win it, as opposed to giving up on field goals when you should take them during the games.
Colum, does that tally for you?
I'm shocked. I think we should take note of the date and the time that Brian O'Leary is backing a Brandon Staley team. I think this is kind of Radiohead against Pulp, in that you have two guys who really like to experiment in Staley, and on the other side with McDaniel and with Vic Fangio. I'm intrigued to see what we get from Justin Herbert with Kellen Moore. This is the test, right? We know Justin Herbert doesn't like to turn the ball over. But can they turn him into the way in which Aaron Rodgers used to be? Rodgers hated turning the ball over, but he was prepared to take those deep shots when necessary. Herbert has all the physical gifts you would want from a QB. He is so talented, but they need to unleash him this year. I still think they miss a speedster to really stretch, and that's what the Dolphins have in abundance. I also want to see, can the Chargers stop the run? That's been the issue again, where they've really struggled. And while Vic Fangio has really struggled against Patrick Mahomes, he's done okay against Justin Herbert and the Chargers. I agree with Brian in that I think it could be the most exciting game of the weekend and the highest scoring game potentially of the weekend, but I'm disagreeing on which way it's going. I have the Dolphins just about edging it, perhaps on a field goal, but for it'll be the Dolphins coming out of this one for me.
I'm going to break the tie. I'm going Chargers on this one. I think maybe it's nostalgia for a former Bears coach, member of the coaching staff, Brandon Staley, but I think they're going to start the season with a win. I think Justin Herbert's going to have a great season this year. I don't know whether that's necessarily going to translate to a great season for the Chargers, given the overall state of the coaching situation there. But that rounds up our review of our preview rather of the Week 1 9 o'clock games. We also have 2 6 o'clock slates broken up into separate shows, and we're doing the late games on Monday Night Football in our 4th show of the week.